Well, we have now seen another hero from this upcoming Heavy Hitters set, and it's Betsy skin in the game. And a lot of people are saying that Betsy is like a powered down version of Bravo, and I'm not quite sure I agree with that, so let's talk about it. Betsy skin in the game is a 4 intellect, 40 health hero. Yes, I did make the mistake of saying 4 health, 40 intellect before, and I cut that, so I'm putting it in correctly. And she says whenever an attack you control wagers, you may pay 2 resources or 2 energy. If you do, that attack gets +1 and overpower. So it's the same cost as dominating an attack in Bravo, except you're getting +1 attack and overpower. Overpower being a keyword that says when your opponent blocks, they can only block with 1 action card, meaning they can still use defense reactions, they can still use equipment to block. There's no sort of hold back on how to block around that like there is with Dominate. So you may look at that and go, well, why play this when I can just pay the 2 resources and push dominated damage? And I would argue that 1, you're not losing that much from this. You're gaining +1 attack, and 2, the timing is completely different, and that makes a huge difference in the world of disruption. So first things first, we need to know about Wager, and this is one of the new cards that was also spoiled along with her. This is her specialization, Betsy's specialization, Bet Big. It costs 4, it's a red, it's a majestic, it attacks for 8, blocks for 3, and it says when this attacks a hero, you may wager a gold, might, and vigor token with them, which means you can put up on the table, you can say someone's gonna win this, a gold token, pay 2, draw a card, that's pretty good, a might token, +1 to the next attack, and a vigor token, pop it at the start of your turn, gain a resource. You don't have to do that, but you can, and in doing so, you're gonna trigger Betsy. By the way, if you don't know what wagering is, basically you put up those, whatever you're wagering, and if the attack hits, you get the stuff. If the attack is blocked out, your opponent gets the stuff. But if you wager, then Betsy's effect can trigger and you can pay 2. And in doing so, you would give this +1 and overpower, meaning that this would be a 9 attack overpower. And your opponent would have to have like equipment plus a 3 block in hand and like a D react, like a 0 for 4, just to cover this up, at which point they're giving up a good bit of stuff for you to basically just play this out for 2 blues. Of course, you are also giving them a gold, a might, and a vigor token if they do cover this up. So you have to kind of pick your battles and decide whether or not the threat density for your opponent's D-reacts is high enough that you should not wager this, or if you feel like you've seen a lot of their D-reacts and it's time to start wagering and trying to win big, which I think is kind of cool. That's a cool mechanic. But why do I think this is good in comparison to something like a Bravo? Well, think about it this way, and this was pointed out nicely on Twitter by Clark Jansen. Highly recommend you know Clark on Twitter. He's a good dude. When you play Bravo into disruptive decks in the format, in order to get a dominate effect off onto your attack, you actually have to start with Bravo's effect. Bravo is an action effect that has go again, so that is a singular effect that your opponent can respond to, and then you actually have to swing your attack. So in years past and in metas past, cards like Arclight Sentinel could come down after they've paid the dominate cost or in response to the dominate cost, and then that attack that you've just dominated as Bravo now has to just go straight into the Arclight Sentinel. And most of the time it was just the hammer going into Arclight Sentinel. This does not work that way at all. In fact, you just get to play this attack, you put it on the stack, which is the worst case scenario for someone trying to play a disruption against you, and then in response to that trigger of the wager there, in response to the wager trigger, you can pay the 2 resources. This is not the same timing window and therefore can't be disrupted in that same way. I think that's a huge distinction to make, and one very astutely put out there by a fantastic Bravo and Guardian player in general. Other thing he pointed out, which I think is also great, so shout out to him as well, this aura that was spoiled along with Betsy is bigger than big. It costs 3, it blocks for 2, and it says at the start of your turn, destroy this, and your next Guardian attack this turn gets +5. By the way, that is Guardian attack. That is not attack action card. This can fall on a weapon. +5, and when this attacks, you can wager a might token, so a +1 counter basically to your next attack. The key point here is that this is triggering at the start of your turn. This is not triggering at the beginning of the action phase, so your opponent can't do anything to respond to this. If this were at the start of your action phase, like we've seen some other auras, then they could respond to this and do disruptive things. Instead, you're just getting this and slamming it down. The fact that this also falls onto weapons is insane, and we have not seen Betsy's new weapon, but we can assume it's perhaps this giant piece of wood that she carries around, which essentially is like a club. She refers to it as a club in her bio on the Fab TCG website. But yeah, this is definitely like a club-like item, which means pummel is on the menu, and you're getting these big attacks. It leans into the auras, which I was kind of surprised to see, but like if we go to aura and we look at the Guardian auras that have been released recently, like for example, Earthlore Empowerment, this also pops at the start of the turn. And then look here, these are the older auras, like Embolden. This pops at the beginning of your action phase. So you can see that there's like this clear design choice change to the auras that have come out recently. And that is very, very cool. Like same thing with Crashdown, because it now means that you can't have that timing window from a disruptive deck. And I expect some amount of heroes from this set to be the more disruptive type. Now, Betsy, I don't think is that. Betsy is definitely like the wager matters. And when we look at what wager things we have in play currently, we have Double Down, which technically is an action that you have to play and then go for. But if you think about this card was a little bit confusing at first, but now it makes a ton more sense because look at what Betsy's effect is. Pay 2 +1 and overpower. Double Down, pay 2 as a separate action, +3 and overpower. That is pretty cool, but you have to play it on a wager card, something like Wage Gold that has wager built into it. But this costs 2, this costs 4. You can technically play these off of 2 blues as well, and then this becomes 8, 9, 10, 11 with overpower. And technically, I guess you could pump this into it, but if you have 2 resources floating, you don't use Betsy's effect, you just play pummel if you have the extra card for it, because I think you could do that off of a 5-card hand, right? 2 blues, these 2 cards, and a pummel, and arsenal. No, you can't. No, you can't play that off a 5-card hand because you need 2 more resources. E-pot, that's the play. Something to that effect. But the other cards that stuck out to me now are cards like Money Where Your Mouth Is being even better because this is a 1 cost, gives an attack the wager keyword so that you can then use the effect off of Betsy again to do this off of a blue essentially. So you use this. You pay for a separate attack, but with the blue that you pitched, you're floating 2 essentially after paying for whatever attack with whatever cards you have, and then you can do Betsy's effect. So technically, Money Where Your Mouth is like with Betsy, a +3 adding a wager gold, but a +4 with overpower to whatever you're adding. And again, she falls on her weapon as well. You can, whatever weapon you're swinging, you can now, you could use this effect on it and give the weapon overpower. Same thing here. That is very, very cool synergy. And it makes things a lot more interesting because, again, Bravo could not give Dominate to his weapon off of his hero power. And here, Betsy can. She is a lot more flexible in that respect. You're giving up some things in the form of overpower versus dominate. Overpower is certainly not dominate. I'm not saying that it is, but you're gaining the +1 and the flexibility of putting this on your weapon. And that is a very, very cool thing. And of course, there's more to discover, I'm sure, like what her weapon is actually going to be. We've heard news that this is perhaps going to be the biggest weapons set that we've ever gotten, which is something to say because Crew had like 2 weapons for everybody and it had Talishar, which is goated. Talishar's amazing. Can we get a Talishar upgrade? That'd be amazing. But if this is the biggest weapon set, then maybe we have multiple weapons that Betsy can tap into and lean into both in Limited, but also in Classic Constructed, and of course Blitz. And we get more effects that like kind of jam down these big attacks and jam down these big auras. What do you think about this? Because I am really interested to see how this is going to shape up and shape out for this set. This is starting to look like a really exciting set. And with 6 heroes and what looks like 3 sort of general archetypes that can kind of mess around with each other with like Wager and Clash, and there's going to be some really, really cool things that are going to come out of this set. I cannot wait to see the other heroes. This is only one of 2 Guardians. We still have another Guardian, we have another Warrior, we have 2 Brutes. This is going to be really, really fun. I cannot wait to see what comes next. So if you're excited for Betsy, let me know why in a comment below. And of course, make numbers go slightly higher so that we can make more videos, and then eventually numbers go to 8, and then sometimes even 9. You never know, that might happen. As always, everybody, thanks for watching.